Thank you, Dr. Dovell, for getting me on this panel. I think we had two very nice lectures. So let's look at panel discussion. I have a couple of cases. And to invite my panelists, Dr. Ajay Bapna from Jaipur, Dr. Jyoti Bajpai from TMS Mumbai, Dr. N.K. Warrior, Dr. Sevanti, Dr. Nitesh, Dr. Somshekhar, Dr. Sudeep Gupta, and Dr. Devinder Paul. I'm not too sure how many of them are here, but let's get started. I was under the impression that the two lectures which were supposed to be there on the guidelines would cover some of the guidelines that have been incorporated after the COVID pandemic has come in. So I had taken out those slides. Anyway, we will discuss those. So let's look at how we manage breast cancer today in these COVID times. So I'll start with the first case. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So this is a 46-year-old banker who is pretty active otherwise, premenopausal, no comorbidities. She has a very positive attitude to struggle with the disease. I think this is an important aspect that we need to keep in mind when we treat our patients. And she is willing to undergo the most effective treatment to get the strongest control of her disease. So the clinical staging is T2N1M0. Clinical, I mean even the imaging. She has had a true cut biopsy, and the histopathology report is IDC grade 3, ER 7%, staining level PR negative, HER2 negative. So let me straight away go to Dr. Somshekhar and ask him what is the type of surgery that you would do to this particular patient given these clinical characteristics. Somshekhar, can you hear me? Hello? Can you unmute Somshekhar, please?
कर रहे हैं, चलो मैं काम करो, अभी इधर बता रहा, आवाज आती है.
Hello, Dr. Somshekhar? Hello. Dr. Som?
I think Dr.
Can you hear me? Okay. You want the previous slide? Can you hear me? NK, can you hear me? Hello. 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 Warrior, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay,
yeah.
I don't know if Somshekhar is on the line or not. So
yeah, I think you can proceed further.
yeah, okay. Since he's not there, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
I think he's the only surgeon on the panel, so we will not be able to have his wisdom. Okay.
Yeah.
So this patient underwent lumpectomy with axillary dissection for the right breast. She had 5 ipsilateral axillary lymph nodes out of the 12 that were removed, and the tumor is high grade, like I mentioned, and it's 4.1 centimeters in maximum diameter. Okay, now that NK is on the line, what would you do next to this lady?
Yeah, looks like a T2 N2 lesion, right? T2 N2.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So next step is definitely to ask for the IS4, which we routinely do in our center.
Okay.
And yeah, depending upon that, we will decide further.
So you do a Ki67, is it?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. Okay. This lady's Ki67 was 24%. So she got adjuvant therapy of TAC6. She had radiotherapy followed by tamoxifen. She also had breast reconstruction. Would you like to comment on the adjuvant therapy that this lady got?
To me?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So this patient has received a fairly aggressive regimen with the use taxane as well as anthracycline. And,
right.
Yeah. I feel currently we don't generally follow this TAC regimen because of the toxicities involved. And but so being a T2 and 2 lesion, it is fairly justified.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Dr. Jyoti, suppose this patient was seen by you this week at Tata Hospital,
right,
when
sir.
the COVID pandemic is going on. What would you do?
So, sir, I would have preferred the sequential regimen rather than concomitant taxane and anthracyclines. I would have preferred AC followed by taxane, and also I would have given prophylactic growth factor support because I don't want
really. That is of course done.
Yeah. For all the cycles, even EC, which otherwise I would have not chosen, but because of the COVID pandemic, I want to use liberal growth factors. That's what would have been my choice.
Okay, so I think now the treatment decision is going to be AC versus BC after COVID, before COVID.
Absolutely, sir.
Dr. Babu, can I interject the question?
Yes.
Dr. Nitesh.
I was just going to ask you next. Yeah, go ahead, Nitesh.
So I missed maybe initial slides, but why didn't we consider neoadjuvant therapy? This is not triple negative patient.
Yeah.
So she was triple negative, node positive. So that was an option also. I'm not saying that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's fine. Yeah. Anybody else had any different thoughts on this? Dr. Sevanti?
So I'll go with Jyoti, where I think is what I would consider.
So would your treatment change if it was AC versus BC? Before corona, after corona?
So for high-risk patients, I have not I've not had to change, switch of therapy.
Okay.
This patient is young without any significant comorbidities.
Okay.
One definitely has to keep that in mind when you're choosing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dr. Sudeep?
Yes, Dr. Babu, I'm very much here.
Yeah, can we have your inputs on what's happened so far?
So I think I agree with all the things that have been said by my very wise colleagues, and I go with that.
Okay, thanks, Sudeep.
Even in the pre-COVID era, I was not a great fan of this. So the situation for me is reasonably straightforward.
Okay, thank you. So this patient actually was on follow-up. Unfortunately, 10 months after the adjuvant end of radiotherapy, she came with recurrence and she had disease in the liver and bones. So what would you do at this point of time? And if you're looking at metastatic disease, what are the factors that determine the aggressiveness of a disease? So I'm sure all of us will call this patient to have an aggressive disease. Yes? Or anybody begs to differ?
Yep. The high lymph node positivity is definitely a factor. Yeah.
Okay.
I would have liked to do a liver biopsy and then retest ERPR, but also, I would like to
Yes.
androgen receptor on this patient.
Okay.
And
So,
she's now more than 6
we
out, so
would you,
I guess PDL1 will be a question as well.
yeah. This was a little about 4 or 5 years ago, so we were not doing all those things. Anyway, that's fine. So this was the time when we were actively using taxanes. We didn't have too much of data on the use of immunotherapy in these patients. So at this point of time, we had a concept that there is something called virulent metastatic breast cancer. So do you believe that this was virulent? And this is just some data that I took out saying when do you call a metastatic breast cancer aggressive? So this includes the TNM stage and specific associated metastasis like visceral versus bone or multiple mets or the burden of metastasis and the biologic factors. This, as Nitesh was telling, it's more akin to a triple negative disease and the Ki-67 which Dr. NK was mentioning and the clinical assessments talking of the response to prior therapies, how long is the disease-free interval, how rapid is the progression of metastasis, the performance status, and the age maybe. And additional genetic factors, which probably are here today, we would be doing BRCA1, TP, probably the PDL1. Would you like to add anything else on this, Nitesh?
So as I said, androgen receptor.
Okay. How commonly are you doing it in your practice today?
So now I feel we should do it in all triple negatives, but if we are really seeing a benefit is where there is a triple negative, very slow, non-aggressive kind of recurrence pattern, very opposite of what you've shown on this patient. But having said that, I think we should do it in all patients and see if it becomes a treatment option at some time.
Yeah, right now in our institution, they're routinely doing it. In the last look at data was about 3.5%. So, yes. Of course, it's a small cohort still. So this is just to show you the disease presentation and overall survival. And we know today that if there's a lot of visceral disease, if it is the number of metastatic sites, then this can sort of predict the overall survival. If the metastatic site is just one, the median overall survival is 31.3 months, 2 sites 24.5 months, and 3 or more sites it's about 19 months. So of course this is pretty old data, but I think the principle holds the same, that the high number of metastatic disease, the shorter is the survival. We know how this lady presented. So do you believe at this that this was a high risk presentation or low risk? I think Nitesh already said that it was triple negative, so you are grouping it under a high risk. Any other thoughts, Dr. Sevanti?
I would also call this high risk, sir, and
okay.
The discussion about adjuvant was
right.
And I mean, she demonstrated very quickly
that
the disease was aggressive.
Correct. Jyoti, any thoughts on this?
Yes, I agree. I agree with the house here. It is an aggressive disease. Pace of the disease is high.
Yeah. So the size was approaching 5 centimeters. That local recurrence, lymph node number high, and the receptor status, like Nitesh said, it was almost triple negative. So this is just to show you the 5-year survival as a function of the number of positive axillary lymph nodes. So as you can see here, as it increases from 0 nodes to more than 20, the 5-year survival dramatically drops from being about 80% to less than 10%. So I think positive nodes is one of the very important prognostic factors for survival for us. Dr. Sudeep, your thoughts on this paper, and do you have any data from your series?
So I think this data is what we all have experienced in our clinical practice as well. That positive lymph node positivity, the lymph node burden, as well as tumor size are the most important prognostic factors of breast cancer. And I often use this kind of data to think about many different decisions, including, for example, extended adjuvant
hormonal
therapy, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing for prolonged hormonal therapy. Excellent. So, Dr. Devinder Paul, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good evening. I am here.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this?
So I agree with how that this lady has a very aggressive course within the span of 9 to 10 months after receiving a full course of anthracycline and
Okay.
taxane. She has progressed in that too in a multiple sites.
Okay.
She requires systemic treatment, but in the COVID era, after discussing with the patient about his intent of treatment and palliation only, I think starting around the oral chemotherapy will be a prudent idea. And in the
Yeah.
meantime, we can
We'll
send
come to
the.
that later slowly. Yeah. Dr. Devinder, can you tell me where you practice in Ludhiana, because I don't have the details with me.
Sir, I'm a pastor from the DM from the Tata Memorial Hospital. So I'm
Oh,
a
okay.
student of Dr.
Okay.
Sudeep, and I'm in
Okay.
Dayanand Medical College at Ludhiana.
Okay. So, lot of TMH genetic pool here. Okay. So, in hindsight, treatment would be any different in the pandemic time? I think most of you have answered this. How would you differently treat? So, I think that is okay. So, your next step in this patient. So, what would you do if she had come today with this disease? Nitesh?
So
She's
after the
AR negative.
triple negative,
AR negative. Yeah.
triple negative. So she's less than a year after failing taxane. I mean, technically you can re-challenge with taxanes again, either as eribulin or as Abraxane. But I would prefer gem and platinum in this patient because I think she's very close to her failing taxane.
Right. So this is what we have: chemotherapy for metastatic recurrent cancer, and you can look at the preferred agents, combinations, and the others. So Nitesh, you're going with the others group, so that is fine. Jyoti?
So my choice would be either eribulin or gem carbo both. I want to look for the how fastly she's her tumor doubling. In fact, so if she's very symptomatic and very fastly doubling, then I would prefer a doublet like gem carbo or otherwise
Okay.
eribulin.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Govind, can I interrupt?
Yes, please. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Oh, sorry,
So-
Ajay.
Yeah, I'm here.
I didn't see your picture, so I forgot.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ajay.
So Jam Carbo again because the topic of discussion today is the COVID time.
Absolutely.
If you
yes.
start the Jam Carbo, then patient has to come every
Weekly.
day 1 and day 8.
Yes.
So that is not desirable during the pandemic. So we need to plan a chemotherapy where the patient can be called after every 3 weeks or so. So
Yeah.
Jam Carbo commuting will be very difficult for the patient.
Yeah, in fact, Ajay, I agree with you, because we are right now running a clinical trial, and that patient is on the gem carbo arm. This this study started before the pandemic, so we are finding it so difficult to get her every week, but we are managing it. Fortunately, she stays close by to the hospital, but I understand, because with all these lockdowns.
Dr. Babu,
Yeah.
Dr. Babu, if suppose a patient is asymptomatic and is healthy and doing well, should
Yeah.
we start treatment right now, or it can be delayed for some time? Anyway, we are dealing with a metastatic aggressive disease,
All right.
so in that
Yeah,
Yeah.
and fortunately, I have the right to not answer your question, so I'll ask the other panelists.
So I think because the disease is aggressive and fastly growing, then already it's metastasized to liver and other organs. So I
Yes.
think if you will wait further, then perhaps we will lose the window. Right now, it is a thin balance between COVID and cancer, and because the pace of the cancer is looking high, perhaps in this young, well-fit patient, I would like to go with chemotherapy now.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, in fact, after this COVID pandemic has come in, we are fighting with 2 C's. Earlier, only 1 C was cancer. Now the second C has come in. So it is a compounding effect that is happening. Yeah, that's right. So this is the today's breast cancer algorithm. So we have already discussed what she was on, how long the disease-free interval was, and you have several options looking at how old she is, what are the comorbidities, and several other things. So this patient, again back to a patient, she received capecitabine and bevacizumab. Those were the days when bevacizumab was really,
Yeah.
in the picture, because there were a lot of trials then saying that there is a lot of benefit with that. So she was started on bevacizumab. She had stable disease for 3 months of treatment. She got another additional 3 cycles, but she progressed. So she had stable bone disease, but she developed new liver metastasis. Nitish, what would you do now?
So now we have to see of what she has now. We are still left with gem carbo, intradental.
Do you want to repeat a liver biopsy at this point of time?
So if we haven't done then, I would repeat now. If
No,
we
it
have
was done.
then,
It was done. It was done at that time.
I don't see the benefit of doing it.
Yeah. So it is just about 8-9 months. So I don't think it would have changed much in the short period of time. Yeah, that's right.
So in the COVID times, we are actually planning our treatment as per the priority of the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
So initially also the ESMO and NCCN, she was falling into the B3 category, priority for me.
Correct.
So I would like to treat this patient only by being the first line treatment for metastatic breast cancer, but not for the second line metastatic breast cancer treatment.
Right.
I would just put her on the supportive care rather than again offering her any kind of systemic anti-cancer treatment.
Yeah, Ajay, I got this patient precisely because she was treated in the pre-COVID era. And so we have all the data. So I was just putting it across so that how would we treat her differently now?
Yeah, not second line in the COVID era.
Yeah. I also think that the same way. I do agree with Dr. Ajay.
Yeah. But do you think that you should make the decision or you should let the patient take the decision of what you make?
Definitely the decision is the decision should come from the patient, but we can always tell them, advise them regarding the risk of getting
exactly. Yeah.
Sir,
can I make a comment?
Sir, can I make
yes, please.
So I in this young patient who's only 47, and you said that she was highly motivated and wants to go do best.
Correct.
I think I will really discuss this with patient and
absolutely.
family. With the risk involved, and I will still prefer to start with metronomic chemotherapy at least one.
Okay. So I think this aspect of participatory medicine is much more relevant today because we need to really discuss all the pros and cons and then take a final decision. So this lady has a taxane-free interval of 17 months. So do you think we can re-challenge this patient with a taxane?
Sir,
she had an unsatisfactory result with first-line capecitabine. So Jyoti, I don't know if capecitabine again would help her.
So again, sir, I think if there is no financial concern, I would like to go for eribulin here. If she can, and also I would like to consider how is the peripheral neuropathy for considering both either eribulin or taxane. Otherwise, both are the valid choices, I would say.
Yeah, she has grade 1 toxicity, and today we have generic eribulin as well. So that is the other advantage we have today.
Correct. So both of these drugs are weekly paclitaxel, but weekly again with the logistic constraints. Otherwise, with toxicity profile is better. So eribulin or pacli would be my choice.
Okay. So what was her androgen receptor positivity, Govind?
It was not done that time.
So
I told you, this was pretty
so
old.
In second line, actually, we will always prefer in COVID time an oral medication.
But how much of data do we have on treating the AR receptor with the AR blockade?
So instead of offering with a very limited data about the other IV chemotherapy, so this can be explained to the patient and let her choose if she can be put on some kind of oral treatment rather than again parenteral.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Jyoti.
So the oral metronomic chemotherapy, as I said, maybe one of the options.
Yes,
of course.
Now second line is parenteral at least.
But we cannot completely rule it out. I understand the concerns here, but we cannot completely rule it out. And especially it is an aggressive disease, and metronomic takes time. And when the disease burden is high, then again the working of metronomic is also a little of concern. So we also should consider all these factors and then choose. So again, those parenterals are also kind of options.
Yeah.
Right. Sir, I feel this has become very challenging and confusing actually, sir. I've always lived with the thought that no matter what, the oncology treatment comes and then other aspects. There may be cost, there may be logistics, and now there's COVID.
Yeah.
And I feel that we may be now changing decisions based on COVID before oncological treatment.
That is true.
I'm genuinely getting confused that that if I am expecting a patient is going to do badly from cancer, which is a certainty, versus I have a smallish percent chance that they will die of COVID if they get exposed to outside their home, which is a priority in this patient. I find this challenging as a question.
Absolutely. Like you said, as if we didn't have enough things confounding, we have COVID as well now. That's true. I agree with you. Yeah.
Do anybody use liposomal doctor?
Yes,
Dr.
yes.
Govind Babu?
Yes, I've used.
Liposomal? Yeah,
yes, that is one of the options, of course.
So I have a point to make, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Simon.
My thought here is that this is a young woman.
Yes.
The disease. I would go all out, COVID or non-COVID. And
Okay.
at this juncture, if we didn't biopsy earlier, I would want to biopsy now. I would sequence the patient. I would try and understand the biology again. The Ki-67 that you showed was 12%.
Yes.
And that makes me wonder what are we dealing with exactly? So I would re-question all of that.
Okay.
Then design my therapy. I would go with eribulin at this time point.
All right.
Patient had issues.
Okay. So at this point of time, when this patient was treated, we didn't have the luxury of eribulin. So we discussed the taxane re-challenge for her. So I thought I brought this case because this was before the COVID era and thought we will see how she was treated and how she can be treated now. So is there an evidence for challenging taxanes and re-challenging taxanes in metastatic breast cancer? So this is the data that we had at that point of time. If it is within 1 year, it is about 35%, 1 to 2 years, about 43%, and if it is more than 3 years, it's about 64%. So that was the data there. And of course, like I told you, this patient came in when nab-paclitaxel had just come in. So we started, and we had this data, so we started this patient. And you must be wondering why I put this picture. So if you see this elderly gentleman in front, I mentioned elderly gentleman in front because I'm behind. So this person is Dr. Vani. He's the one who actually worked on paclitaxel. So I was lucky to meet him. And this is Dr. Neil Desai, who worked on Abraxane. So I was fortunate to meet both of them under the same roof. So I thought I shouldn't miss the opportunity of taking a picture with them. So I thought I'll share this with you.
Very nice.
Thank you. So that is case one. Hopefully, with what I've shown, we will try and do something different. So this is a second case who is a triple positive, 58-year-old, locally advanced breast cancer and no comorbidities. This is the PET scan of this patient done in December of 2019. And what I want you to look at is the burden that is here. So she has no disease elsewhere in the body. So how will you treat her? Som? Is Dr. Somshekhar there now?
Yeah, Babu, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, we missed you in the first case.
Sorry,
and we did a lumpectomy and axillary lymph node dissection without.
I saw that. I could see it on the screen. I could see the whole discussion on the screen. I couldn't chip in.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I think I'll use your expertise here.
Yeah, no problem. See, whether COVID or no COVID, I will just little transgress to that and come back to this case.
Yes.
As a medical oncologist, you are quite more liberal because your interaction, unlike surgeon and vapors, are very less. Second thing is, because we need to see at this moment if we operate and a patient is asymptomatic, but post-op convalescent they turn out to be COVID positive, then they have 30 to 40% mortality than other people.
And she will sue you because you gave her COVID in the hospital.
Exactly. So we have a special concern. So, but the beauty is there are 3 guidelines which has come: the BASO guidelines and the SFO and IASO for breast cancer. Where only patient we would operate would be a T1N0 N0 who is not a candidate for neoadjuvant hormone therapy.
Okay.
Rest all we would send them to medical oncologists. They maintain more hygiene and more protocol than surgeon. So they take the burden of COVID.
Now, thank you so much for giving us such status.
So if you see in the breast for surgeon and the imaging specialist category 1, 2, 3, category one is a suspicious lump, immediate evaluation and diagnosis, core and IHC, very important.
Right.
To risk stratify, so that if they are ER negative, HER2 positive, all of them actually go to medical onco for chemo. If they are ER positive and if they are not even M0, then again they go for neoadjuvant treatment. Very few, the only patient which are supposed to operate is somebody who has completed all neoadjuvant treatment and they're waiting in window of surgery are the only one we operate.
Okay.
Now this case you have put is very simple and easy because it's a locally advanced breast cancer. So we would assess a triple assessment, clinical evaluation, and then core biopsy, do ER, PR, HER2 Ki67.
Well, that is done. I
And
told you.
metastatic
She's
survey would go to
positive.
you.
Yeah. So she has no metastasis. Okay. So
What is the ER,
neoadjuvant-
PR, HER2 status?
all positive. Triple positive.
Good. So either way, all LABC would go to neoadjuvant unless they are luminal A, they would go for neoadjuvant chemo with anti-HER2 therapy.
Okay. So this is a guideline for who should be considered for preoperative systemic therapy for early breast cancer. Of course, this is locally advanced. And would you treat her today with dual HER2 blockade plus chemotherapy, Sevanti?
So there is data, but I haven't, necessarily made it a compulsion to treat every patient, and there are many who are not able to afford a dual.
No, we are not talking about affordability here.
So there is enough data today to give dual HER2 blockade in your and yes, I would offer it to the patient.
Okay. Nitesh, what would you
Yes,
do?
sir, I would, sir.
Jyoti?
I may just start with trastuzumab along with paclitaxel and see how she's doing. Many of the patients.
No, May. What would you do for this patient?
I will do this. I mean.
Okay.
I will start with single agent. I mean, say trastuzumab along with taxane, and we'll see how she's doing. Many patients, when we are giving single agent, also they are doing well. So I will not start with dual.
They will do well with single agent also, but would you do dual
right now? So that's why I'm saying
So you will not do. Okay. NK, what would you do?
Yeah, given a choice, I will definitely go for dual HER2.
Yeah, you're given a choice.
And yeah, in a couple of patients, we got excellent response and pathological CR with the.
No, like I showed you, this patient came in December 2019. Okay. Right, Ajay, what would you do?
I would use dual HER2 blockade with docetaxel and carboplatin combining with pertuzumab and the trastuzumab.
Oh, okay. Dr. Devendra, would you differ? In Ludhiana, would you do the same as you would do in TAF?
No, sir. I'll go with the same, but the only thing is that she's HER2, but she's triple positive. The data per se is more in favor of the patients who are only HER2 positive and ER negative, but still, her dual blockade is the one.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So this is the data that we have, Newsphere. This patient got 3 cycles of THP, and in spite of growth factors, she developed 1 episode of febrile neutropenia, and she had grade 2 peripheral neuropathy at the end of 3 cycles. So what would you do at this point of time? Ajay? She's finished 3 cycles. She's had good response clinically.
So, now the febrile neutropenia.
Yeah. No, she has recovered. But I told you that she developed it, but she's okay.
We complete at least, giving this chemotherapy for at least 3 months, and then can be discussed in the multidisciplinary team whether she can be operated upon or not.
Yeah, you're my part of MDT now.
Yeah. So after 3 cycles, we need to assess her for the response.
So this is her PET scan.
Yeah.
So this is the disease I showed you, and this is what it is now. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So Somshekhar, what would you do now?
In case of triple negative and HER2 new positive.
No. This patient.
She is triple
positive.
That's
what. So this patient is HER2 new positive. In HER2 new positive, if I opted for neoadjuvant treatment and they're responding, they're not those 3 to 4% rare progressive. I would complete the entire neoadjuvant treatment, and then I would reassess the patient.
Dr. Somshekhar, the neoadjuvant will continue for then 1 year.
No, but patient has not completed all the chemo, right?
But if I have to continue this anti-HER2 blockade,
and also patient develops
has all the neoadjuvant chemo be completed? Has all neoadjuvant chemo completed?
He has finished 3 cycles.
So that's what. So it is not completed all the
So
chemo.
how
I will
many
complete
you want
all
to
the
give?
chemo.
How many
I
you
will
want to give?
see what
No,
is the regime
Somashekhar.
you opted for here.
Chemo is for
No,
1 year.
Somashekhar, we can't because the fitness already now
Yes.
is great for development. So it's not wise to continue chemo.
This
So
is
what-
no. This is a case of LABC, and you are given 3 chemo, and you are given a dual HER2 blockade.
Yes.
So
So the
the
ideal is, I think, till the maximal response, and then go for surgery, and rest of the treatment can be given post operatively.
no, but in HER2 new positive and triple negative, both options are available. Either a complete all chemo you complete and keep only anti-HER2 therapy, then you operate.
So surgery will be done after 1 year.
Surgery will be done after all the chemo is completed.
I asked for the
Dr. Sudeep,
study.
can I get you one?
He has left.
Oh, he's left. Okay. 70?
So I was just saying, as per the Christine study, it's just 6 cycles of chemotherapy
Yes.
with the full HER2 blockade.
Yeah.
The patient has already received 6 cycles. There's been febrile neutropenia. The patient
Yes.
responded really well.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not standard of care, but one would want to consider surgery at this time.
Yeah. So let me give a little more background of this patient. Her daughter is a physician who is taking care of COVID patients in Dubai right now. Okay, and fortunately she has not had contact, she has not come in, or this lady has not gone there. So she is sort of,
Can I ask a question, please, sir?
yeah, go ahead.
So two questions, sir. So the right upper lobe of this patient seems to have a met there. So I don't know if this was a oligometastatic HER2 positive which changes everything, or whether it
No.
was just LABC, sir.
Yeah, it was just LABC. We discussed with the radiologist, and he felt it was a non-specific
So
thing.
the second thing is, I
Yeah.
think it's actually a surgical process. It is operable, operate. If not, we still have anthracycline we can give without need of repeat.
Nitesh, surgeon wants you to give chemotherapy. You want to do surgery.
So I think we need.
In the
Anyway, let
COVID
me tell
era,
you
sir,
what we did.
everything is reversed. In COVID era, everything is reversed.
No,
So,
if you look at Babu, if you look at the guideline from SSO,
Yeah.
ASO and IASO, HER2 new positive patients
Yes.
who are responding and part of neoadjuvant surgery
Yes.
should be delayed as much as 6 months. You have
Yes.
not even into 3.5 months of treatment to this.
Yes, but I also showed you that she had problems with the therapy.
Yes.
So we need to keep that also.
I
in
think we
mind.
have to individualize the patients and then
Yes.
do it.
Absolutely, Dovell. I was just coming to you for your wisdom.
If she's
Okay.
responding well, I think we will continue up to 6 cycles.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
there is a lot of morbidity, then I think better you can intervene.
Yeah. In fact, she came with febrile neutropenia. She had candidiasis. So fortunately, she came out of all that.
Yes.
So
Govind.
my son, yeah.
Govind, this is Ramesh.
Yes, Ramesh.
Would you give these people anthracycline at any point?
See, there is actually a study called TRAIN, which has actually combined anthracycline with HER2 blockade, and they have not shown worsening of the cardiac events. So that is one study. In fact, there are 2 studies which have shown. So yes, that is also
The
possible.
reason I brought that up really is this
Yeah.
debate about when we will do surgery or what do we do.
Yeah,
Especially when you're giving a dual blockade, what I understand is that you
Correct.
do 4 cycles.
yeah,
Finished your the dual blockade, the
Correct.
taxane,
yeah,
and then do surgery and then give your anthracycline and
Yeah.
go back to it because anthracycline is a good HER2 responsive drug.
correct.
We cannot, so far at least, people have not completely given up on that.
No, with dual HER2 blockade, there is evidence that you don't really need to use anthracycline also. You can use taxane and carboplatin and not necessarily add anthracycline.
Yeah, but that has not come yet.
It is not a part of the thing that you need to use anthracycline with dual HER2 blockade.
Okay.
No, Dr. Ramesh Nimegadda is right in some way because the level of evidence for dual blockade versus sequential AC followed by paclitaxel or trastuzumab, the level of evidence is same. So no one regime is better than the other.
Yeah, that Trifinat study,
So
Yeah.
there is no category 1 recommendation in this patient. all are 2A.
Yeah, correct. So
Yeah.
whatever you are comfortable with.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can use.
So Dr.
So-
Ramesh,
So I think if we would have started with my choice, the single, perhaps we would not be having febrile neutropenia, and perhaps the discussion was in different direction.
Unfortunately, this was the decision we took, Jyoti.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. So this patient, she underwent BCS plus sentinel lymph node, and she had complete pathological response. Breast and axilla, of course, that is when we call complete pathological response. I don't think we have a radiotherapist here, right? So what would you do for the next cycle? Ajay? She has finished 3 cycles.
yeah, we'll continue the trastuzumab now to complete the 12 months of the trastuzumab. Pertuzumab, there is no data in the post-operative setting, so continue the trastuzumab.
No, that is data for dual blockade as adjuvant also. No, now what I'm talking is she has finished 3 cycles of chemo plus dual HER2 blockade. Would you like to continue chemotherapy?
Yeah,
with
3
dual
more
HER2?
cycles. 3 more cycles of chemo plus dual N2 HER2 blockade, and then continue the trastuzumab. I'm not sure about the maintenance pertuzumab. If anybody can.
I'll show you some data on
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
I'll show
sure.
Nitesh, what would you do?
Sir, I would certainly give 12 months of Herceptin.
No. That is later on. Now
Like chemo.
she's finished. Yeah.
Sir, very debatable actually. I personally don't think I would want to give her more chemotherapy. I don't see the adjuvant benefit in a pathological CR. But she is incomplete on her chemotherapy, so I can understand somebody accepting.
Yeah. So, what I did, I'll tell you. I had a discussion with her, and I thought that she must get one more cycle of chemotherapy. So I substituted docetaxel and carboplatin with eribulin. And I was expecting she could tolerate it well. But unfortunately, she came down with a febrile neutropenia again.
Oh.
Yeah. So fortunately, we got her out. And then she said, I will not take any more chemotherapy. So I also decided I will.
Dr. Babu, why do you want to give further chemo? If at all you want to give chemo,
no, because I thought she had.
The capecitabine would have been a better choice.
Correct. So anything would have been a better choice in hindsight. So I thought eribulin was pretty safe because I have had good experience with eribulin. So, but she did develop. So we stopped after 1 cycle of eribulin with dual HER2 blockade. And I don't think the radiotherapists are there. She also got radiation. And now actually because of all these problems, I'm giving her dual HER2 blockade, but I've shifted from chemo to anastrozole. So this is the proposed strategy. I think somebody was talking about dual HER2 blockade as adjuvant. So here,
I was.
Yeah. So here it is for 1 year. Either Herceptin alone, trastuzumab, or trastuzumab plus pertuzumab for 1 year. And if there is a residual disease, then of course TDM. So are all of us following this algorithm that is put up here? This is actually from Clinical Care Options.
So it is with or without pertuzumab? So what
with
was
pertuzumab.
No, this is with or without?
Yeah, both are okay.
So is there any graph, Kaplan-Meier, you can show the addition?
I don't have that, but I'll send you the details.
Whether it is really benefited?
Yes. I'll send you the details. I don't have it here. So that is how I manage this lady. Yeah. Dovell, your final thought on this case? Dr. Dovell? Okay, he's unmuted. Okay, so let's rapidly go on to the third case. I think we're running out of time. This is a 35-year-old lady who is metastatic breast cancer, mets to bone, lungs, and liver. She's ERPR positive, HER2 negative. Her symptoms are mild cough, abdominal pain. Her basic evaluation of the biochemistry and cardia are normal. So how will you manage? Let me start with Ajay again.
So she is a young female with symptomatic metastasis.
Correct.
And what were we can put her into the visceral crisis because she is quite symptomatic for the metastasis.
Okay.
So for a very quick response, she need to be started on chemotherapy first, because she is not a right candidate for hormone therapy plus CDK4/6 inhibitors.
Why do you say that?
She is symptomatic for her metastasis.
Okay.
Because
Jyoti? Dr. Sevanti?
So yes, she is symptomatic.
Yeah.
But, I didn't get the message that she was, overtly symptomatic. And the other message that came through was that all her labs are good.
Yes, that's right.
So I would actually want to try inhibition.
Dr. Devinder, what would you do?
No, so I would explain to
Go ahead, Sevanti. Finish.
I would just explain to the patient that there's this borderline situation that they are managing, but I would like to give a try to CDK4/6 inhibition.
Okay. Dr. Devinder?
Yes, sir. Again, I'll discuss with the patient how much fast he wants the response. Of course, CDK4 inhibitor is one option, but if the patient is quite symptomatic, then giving chemotherapy is also one of the options.
Okay.
So we don't know actually the magnitude of symptoms. So
I told you, she had mild cough and mild pain.
Yes. So in that case, we can just continue with CDK4 and the hormones.
So I have just put this algorithm here, which was actually from Dr. Hotobayagi, and this was first published in 1995 and again in 1998. So for a long time, we have been following this. I'm sure most of us have been following this at least, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So this is just to tell you that we have characteristics in the pre versus postmenopausal women. And we all believe that younger women have aggressive disease because of various factors, and also they tend to have poorer outcomes. Sudeep, can I ask you your opinion on this? Oh, he has left, sorry. Okay. Dr. Dowell? Dowell also has left. Our host has ditched us.
No, those are like mine might have not able to unmute.
Okay. Dr. Nitish? Okay, let's ask the surgeon himself now. Somshekhar?
I agree. This is what was a belief, but not necessarily now. Things are a little bit changing. We need to individualize.
Okay. So we have this class of drugs, the cyclin 4/6 inhibitors, and we have 3 of them. In fact, there's a 4th one, which is an intravenous one, which has just come in. So we have data from endocrine therapy in premenopausal patients. This is actually all the combinations and the Oxford opinion with level of evidence and grade of evidence, and also the AGO. So you can see that all of them have actually included CDK4/6 inhibitors in premenopausal women. And I have been involved in both ribociclib and abemaciclib in the premenopausal women. So I think our concept that hormone therapy is slow and chemotherapy acts rapidly needs to be challenged. And many of the guidelines are now actually putting up these hormone therapies with CDK4/6 inhibitors as a first line. In fact, there is data from the Arimidex study, which has actually done a drop in Ki-67 at 14 days after giving Arimidex. And the drop has been almost 50%. So we all believe Ki-67 is a proliferative index. So within 14 days, if there is a drop by 50%, I think that is good response. So I think the concept that has settled in our brains need to change as well. And with the addition of CDK4/6 inhibitors with the aromatase inhibitors and ovarian function suppression, I'm sure they will be doing better. And this I have actually seen in the patients who have been on both these trials. Have anybody else been involved in this clinical trials of these 2 CDK4/6 inhibitors?
Not really.
Okay.
So what will be your choice of CDK4/6 inhibitor amongst all these 3? Because there is a very good data of abemaciclib now, particularly in this case.
Yes.
Because she has high-grade tumor, liver metastasis.
Yes.
And
so there is data comparing all the 3 CDK4/6 inhibitors. Of course, there is no head-to-head comparison, but they have there is preclinical data to show that the ribocyclic activity of CDK4/6 inhibition is better, and abemaciclib has more of CDK6 inhibition, and the toxicity profile is different. Palbociclib has been there for a long time, so we feel comfortable with palbociclib because that our hands-on experience is for a much longer period with that. But I have a personal bias with ribociclib because I had one of the largest series on the study, and that's published in Lancet Oncology. I happen to be one of the authors. Abemaciclib also we have been involved in the study, but the side effect profile is slightly not as good as with ribociclib, especially the GI toxicity.
But the only point is during the COVID time, if we are discussing, probably offering her ribociclib is little bit, questionable.
Palbo would be a better option.
Why do you say that?
Because you are more used to it, actually.
Correct. No, the other thing, no, I was trying to ask Ajay why he doesn't want to use ribociclib instead of
Suppose, unfortunately, if she develops some COVID infection, then she will have to be given either azithromycin or the hydroxychloroquine, which further prolongs the QTC prolongation.
Okay, good you brought that up. The QT prolongation of ribociclib is when it was used with tamoxifen. So the study had a choice of using either tamoxifen or a non-steroidal aromatase inhibitor. So it was with tamoxifen specifically. So most of us are not using tamoxifen, we are using an AI. So with AI, the chance of QTC prolongation is nil actually. In my center, we used AIs for all the patients. So we did not come across any of this. So that is the thing that you need to remember. But abemaciclib, like I said, produces diarrhea. So in COVID times, that could be an added toxicity.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is where we are with this. And just to prove the point that we have always been talking, this is the study that we are actually doing right now. This is called the right choice. So this is. We have started. We have enrolled one patient now.
Okay.
So that was a patient who is on the chemo arm, getting gemcitabine and carboplatin. So this, I think, although we believe, and there is data from different studies to show that hormone manipulation is as good as chemotherapy, this study was actually designed to show that yes, indeed, this is true, and hopefully we'll get data from this, and we can fall back on this and tell, even in the premenopausal where we would be really tempted to use chemotherapy, we can use hormone management with the CDK4/6 inhibitor. So, what are your thoughts on the design of this study, Ajay?
So this is for symptomatic visceral metastasis.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have already some Indian data that was prepared by Dr. Amit Rauthan on the similar, background. And he has shown his in data using palbociclib that mildly symptomatic visceral metastasis, they did really well on palbociclib.
Yeah.
So probably the design is really good.
Yeah, actually for this study, it is a randomization of those patients in whom you will clinically decide that you will give chemotherapy. So that is the basic thing. So you're tempted to give chemotherapy, but you want to enroll on the study and you have a randomization. Sevanti, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's a brilliant thought process, and I would also, I'm always torn, you never know. So the patient that you presented, I would have discussed, what do you discuss? You discuss that you'll have to abandon CDK4/6 inhibition if it started that, if the patient becomes more symptomatic.
Yeah.
There's no quick control. So you prepare the patient. Because why? Because we don't know. I think it's a very genuine question to ask.
Okay, thank you. Jyoti?
She's already left.
Oh, she has left. Dr. NK, he's also left?
Yeah.
Only 3 or 4 of us are left.
So I think this is a last slide. So our DFS is pretty good then. DFS and OS. So Dole, I think this is my last slide.
Babu, I can just chip in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because when we looked at mildly symptomatic patient with visceral mets under Palbo, which we published, me and Amit analyzed, and initially we put in ASCO, then we went into the JCO Global Oncology. Actually, surprisingly, it is just a mindset change. Initially, we thought
Yes.
visceral chemo, non-visceral
Yes,
hormone. Then we
absolutely.
told no problem, visceral asymptomatic. But surprisingly, those people almost did the same as an asymptomatic patient with low volume visceral. So it is just a change of
Correct,
mindset.
correct.
Looking at this trial you have done, that
Absolutely.
would come out
Yeah.
very good, and there is no reason.
Yeah. So Somsekhar, if
That
you have
was
some
our
patients,
experience with
please,
Palbo in such group.
so if you have some patients, please send them over. We'll love to enroll them.
Definitely, don't enroll in the other arm. Enroll in the CDK.
No, this is randomization, blinded. So, so this is actually another slide which I thought I'll just show. This is looking at physician-reported reasons for choice of endocrine therapy. So they've looked at patient eligibility for chemotherapy and whether they want a break from chemotherapy, patient's age, performance status. So all this we definitely keep in mind, and I think more important in the COVID pandemic times. So I think this is one thing we need to remember. Although this was published in 2014, I think it is pretty relevant even today. So this is something that I got, which is published just this month in Nature Reviews, which talks about the priority of treating various diseases. And I think you should go through this article. It's not very big, but very, very nice article. And if you see here, one end is low priority, other one end is high priority. And if you see, neoadjuvant or adjuvant indications are very important. So this is almost tending towards high priority, especially for high-risk breast cancer patients. So whereas palliative indications for colorectal and breast is somewhere in the middle, and all the other things are in the low priority. So I would really suggest all of you to go through this. It's a short article, but very well and written. And
I've gone through this article. Very nice article. Everyone should read it.
Exactly, it just got published. So it makes sense to actually use it in today's time for prioritizing our patients. So I think that is my last slide. Yeah, I don't think we have any questions.
Thank you, Babu. No,
Thank you very much. Thank you.